Squad show. I'm your host, as always, Callum, and joining me today, I've got Kerm and Tom as we look to break down the Collingwood Magpies and their Game Day Squad outlook, both how they went this year and how they're going to be looking going forward. Guys, I'm not too excited to be here. I was hoping we had a good team after the Blues last week, but we're stuck with the Pies.
Yeah, struggling for good content here, but for the listeners who don't know, we actually go in to do some analysing and research on these teams, and I don't know about you guys, but I found these guys as confusing as my mustache right now. It is... I had no idea what to say about these guys. I really had to dive deep, but keen to get into it regardless.
Oh. Yeah, look, I couldn't agree with you more there. I came up stuck a lot of the time. I was very unsure with some of my picks, but there's some definite good upside players in this list, and we're going to get right into it. So let's go.
I can't wait to hear them because, like Kerm, I did struggle to find them. But guys, let's have a look at the Pies. As always, we're going to break down, start by looking how they went this year. Then we're going to move on to how they're going to be going for the 2022 Premiership season, how coaches should be looking to build out their squads for next year. And then finally have a look at their potential, which of course is unique to Game Day Squad. That is the podcast that we are here. That is the network we are on. Game Day Squad is Australia's first and only fantasy blockchain platform, launching with an AFL and NRL game for the 2022 season. So if you haven't checked this out, go over to Game Day Squad and have a look. We've got a lot going on there or on all of our socials to learn more. And also, it means a lot, guys. If you do like and subscribe to this video, it helps us get started as we look to introduce our revolutionary platform to the world. So, guys, let's get straight into it. Let's talk about the Collingwood Magpies. And unfortunately, it's not a team that wants to have us talking about how their year went because there's quite a terrible year. You can see there, 1-6, lost 16th, finished 17th, and in the year they saw their coach, Nathan Buckley, leave the team. So, having a look at their highlights, unfortunately, the highlight was Nathan Buckley's last game in charge. They beat the Demons at the SCG in round 13 by a few goals, and yeah, it was the last game of Nathan Buckley in charge. They had agreed, he would leave after that week. So it was really good to see them get that win. Love to see him finish on a high. But unfortunately, if that's your highlight of the year, I think that sums it up. And then on the other side of the coin, the Do Better report came out, which found Collingwood guilty of systemic racism throughout its history. Saw the departure of Eddie Maguire leave and then a new president step in and now someone else is gone. And honestly, with my research for it, I don't even know if that role's been placed. It's a bit of a shambles. And then for me, the disappointments continue. And you flick back 12 months ago where Treloar and Jaden Stevenson both left the club. The club didn't give them the contracts that they wanted. And now, those two players, one's gone on to play in a grand final and the other one's gone on to be a bit of a key player in that North team. So, yeah, overall, I feel really sorry for Buckley. I don't know about you guys, but growing up in Brisbane, everyone hated him up there for leaving the Lions and then saying, I want to go win a premiership. And then he left the Lions, and then obviously Lions beat him in the grand final once or twice. And yeah, I really have come to admire him as a person. And for me, I look back on that grand final they lost, and he would have been hurting more than any other person on that field or on that thing. Obviously, he's gone through that grand final loss pain. Again, I don't know if you guys remember the videos of him. Like, they did the up-close AFL footage, and him talking to the runner that ran through the mark and him talking to the banner people and him talking to the players. And I was just like, that's the guy I want in my corner. And it's, just such a sour way for a coaching career to end. And, he used to play for Port Adelaide once upon a time. I would happily have him back because, you can't get quality people like that everywhere. So I have rambled on a bit, guys. We are talking about this from a fantasy perspective. So try and cheer me up a little bit here. Let's talk about who you guys had as your stars of the fantasy year for the Magpies. Who wants to kick us off?
I will kick this one off. So, Death, Taxes, and Jack Crisp having a productive fantasy season. I mean, since joining from the Lions back in 2015, Crisp hasn't averaged less than 84 points on a full season. And a team that pretty much internally blew up last year, one of the only shining lights was Crisp, occupying the back line as he does, averaging a career-high 27 disposals a game, and took him to 118 GDS average. The guy is a gun, and it's that simple.
Yeah, great pick. Looks like Tom, on my end, didn't want to hang around to see that one. If you are here, Tom. He's gone. He didn't want to hear it. So we'll skip over his and we'll jump into mine. And hopefully he does reappear somewhere on the chat. But I'm going to zag a little bit because I was going to say the two picks that I knew you guys were coming with were going to be the surefire things. But I've actually gone with Chris Mayne. I know, bit of a shock, and hear me through this. So this was actually his first, and by the way, he's just recently retired this year. So this is the last that we're going to see of Chris Mayne. This is his first year ever to crack the Game Day Squad ton as an average, which I thought was outstanding. And if you'd had a look at where his trajectory was going, since his first couple of years at Collingwood and the years before that against Freo, he was starting to drop off a fair bit. So those coaches that went out and got Chris Mayne would have seen some real upside, some real value in him, particularly in Game Day Squad, where it's not just the thing where you get them and you increase in price and you can sell them off like a game day, like a fantasy AFL or super coach. If you'd have gone out and got Chris Mayne at the start of the year, you could have made some money off him because he did come into it, and he was actually the 4th highest overall for the team, which I think is saying something there. 11th highest overall defender. Yeah, just a really, really good year for a really good story for a team that didn't go so well. So I'm going to assume that Tom isn't going to be able to jump back on, and he's got Brodie Grundy there, guys. And I would have picked him as well. Surefire. I think he finished 2nd overall for Rucks. Number 1 at the club, 21st overall rank. And you can just see that Brodie's one of the elite ruckman, Haycomb. And he's a player and he's one of the few players that I absolutely love watching from them. No surprises that he's got Grundy as his star of the year there. Might hear if we can get him back on for the next bit, might hear a little bit more about that. But if not, we'll move on. Who do you have as your disappointment, Kerm?
Any danger of Jordan De Goey giving us any sort of consistency at all? I mean, dude, and to be honest, I really don't know how much of it is his fault. But after every big game that he has, the next day it's headlines comparing him to Dusty Martin, and it's like, please, he's not even Dusty's left pinky toe.
Yeah.
So until he can prove himself as a genuine game winner, at least give us 20 touches a game, he won't be anything he's cracked up to be. It's just. And as I said, I'm not sure how much is his fault because a lot of it is coming from the media and Collingwood fans and stuff like that. But yeah, he's just not all he's cracked up to be just yet. Happy to be proven wrong.
He is an interesting one because, like you said, they will there's games and he plays that sort of dusty role sometimes, and they'll be like, expect him to be that, but he's just not that player. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't watch enough of the Pies, if I'm very honest, to know whether that off-field stuff, I should say, whether I know that's him leading that or not, but. Yeah, I do know what you mean. Inconsistency does hurt as a fantasy coaches. And again, we're going to skip over Tom, and I'm going to give you my pick. And my pick this one is a bit of an interesting one, I think. I'm going with Darcy Moore as my disappointment of the year. If you remember back, they started out as a defender, one of the game's best defenders, we know that. But then all of a sudden, when the Pies weren't scoring goals, they threw him forward. And then by the end of it, they threw him back. And then he did his knee in that highlight of the season, that game, which just shows you how much of a highlight that game really was and how bad the season was. But when he was on, he looked really, really good. And 5th overall for the club, key defender. He's one of the best in the game. 3rd highest ranking key defending position in Game Day Squad. So even with that, as a defender, I do expect more. You can see there he loves taking a mark. He loves having a kick. But there was just something missing, and it was that, I just thought he'd get a bit more of the footy, and for me it was just a real disappointment. Not only because he went out with the knee, that was part of it, but then also he just couldn't ever he had those games, I think he absolutely teed off, scored 130 over a couple of games, but yeah, again, that inconsistency as well. Because for me, he's not quite at the Jacob Wiedering level that we spoke about last week with the Blues, but he is pretty good. So yeah, my disappointment. And
these graphics on your screen are really telling, because we've seen Chris Mayne, who was 4th in their club's rank, and now Darcy Moore, who's a fullback essentially, ranked 5th in club and fantasy points. I mean, that's bad, man. Yeah, that is really, really bad.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And yeah, like I said, I'm a Port Adelaide fan, and you're a Gold Coast fan, so we're not just going to sit here and hate Collingwood because that's the thing you're meant to do. I don't really buy into that, but there is it's just quite bleak at the moment for the Pies, and I'm sure as we talk about their sort of dynasty and future going forward, I will get to that, but yeah, it's not looking good. Another one not looking good. Tom had Jeremy Howe as his disappointment for the year. When you're looking at those stats, you can see there on screen, 11th overall, 164th overall, and then 11th for the club. Just not where they thought Jeremy Howe would be when they thought he'd just be that off halfback, just getting kicks after kicks and taking those marks. Yeah, I'd have to agree with Tom. What do you think about that pick?
Yeah, 100%. And he was injured for a lot of the year. I think he only played 8 games off the top of my head.
Yeah.
And that's sort of been the story of Jeremy Howe's career, unfortunately. We saw him at the Demons. He was a high-flying, forward who could go up the wing, take massive grabs. We've all seen videos of Jeremy Howe taking screamers. And he really established himself as a really good general down back for the Magpies. And it's a bit of a shame to see him at his age, I think 31, only played 8 games last season. It's hard to see what's going to happen going forward.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to where we think they're going to be next year, but I just don't know if he's in their next premiership side, which is a disappointment. And to wrap it off, I've given them an E for the year. They are the second lowest ranking, or grade, I should say, of any of the clubs this year for me. I just thought they were terrible on field. I've spoke about their list management, which I thought was terrible, and I think their board management's been even worse. So, yeah, I can see what have you got. We got Tom there at a D+. It was a bit more lenient, but still pretty harsh. And you've got them there, Kerm, at a D as well. Talk us through that one.
Yeah, I wanted to give him an E, but I sort of threw him a bone because of the injuries. It was a really tough season for him. A lot of the off-field stuff was so avoidable, and it showed on field how much that hit them. So I gave him a D. I wanted to give him an E+, but yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough, and we're going to get into how we think they're going to go going forward in the future. But before we get into that, I just don't think we're trending in the right way. And one of the things I love about Game Day Squad, which is going to be very different to your normal fantasy platforms, is we're actually going to see the trading of players. Where in the AFL we just don't get that when you compare to the NBA or the NFL or these big names trading. We get to say a player like Brodie Grundy, right? We've just spoken about how great he was this year, yet the team sucked. And again, like Jeremy Howe, he's probably not going to be in their next premiership side, but we're definitely not going to see him traded. It's just not in the way the AFL is set up. But with Game Day Squad, if you've got either of those players in your team, whether you want to trade them in or trade them out, we're actually going to see what people are going to value someone like Brodie Grundy at. So if I was to put a Brodie Grundy on the transfer market, irrespective of the different tiers we have, I'd love to sort of see what people think Brodie Grundy's worth, what you trade to have a Brodie Grundy in your team, or a Jeremy Howe. Does he have much value? Would you be getting a future player, a draft pick? Who knows? But yeah, one of the things I'm most excited about for Game Day Squad. So go over and check out our socials at Game Day Squad. Instagram, we have a lot of stuff speaking about the different things and the upcoming features as well. But yeah, our website also has a lot more. So if you have any questions, of course, please comment them below or hit us up on our socials, because we're really excited with our platform. And yeah, can't wait to launch for the 2022 season, which is, I think, where we're going to pick off in a moment with the Pies. Hopefully Tom's back.
Boom. Hopefully.
Hey, he's back.
He's alive. Look at him.
We have found him.
Got caught in another multiverse or something, guys. I'm sorry.
Really?
I'm back.
He could hear us allegedly, but he could not respond. But he is back. As you can see, we're going to move now on to the 2022 season for the Pies. Before we do that, I always forget to show this screen before we move on, and that's where we have the Pies and their grade versus those other teams. So we have done the review on the Lions, the Crows, and last week, unfortunately, the Blues, and you can see where we've got them. So please go back, check them out if you want to get yourself game day ready for the 2022 AFL fantasy season. But guys, we're going to move on now onto where we have them sitting for the predictions for the Magpies for 2022. So far, you've been pretty generous on where I've been placing these teams, but I want to know where you think I've got the Pies. And I want to start by talking about that trajectory they're on, where they started at 18, 19, they were in that sort of premiership race, and then slowly but surely dropping down. And I was actually very close, very, very close to putting that 22 on the other side, which is complete bottoming out. But I have put them on that left-hand side because of one key thing. I'm going to save it. I'm going to build the suspense here. I will talk about why I've put them on the road back up and not completely bottoming out by North. But what I do want to talk about here is where I've got them. I do still think they're going to finish last next year, guys. I do think that's the absolute floor, and I really don't see them progressing much past 14th next year. Have I got this one right?
Yeah, for me you have. The players that took him to the grand final were like Scott Pandelbury, Steel Sidebottom, those sorts of club legends. I mean, they're in their early mid-30s now, so it's a hard ask for young players like Josh Dacost, Noble, these guys who are expected now to jump into that engine room and take off where they left off. And I just can't see it happening. It's going to go worse before it gets better for the Pies.
Yeah, and look, I'll double down there and say you have gotten this correct. And this situation's giving me a little bit of deja vu. And as a Swans fan, I'm sure you guys remember the Swans were very competitive. We had a couple grand finals, and then we sort of went through that period after of bit of confusion. You know, there was a bit of aging happening with the team. The core group of people that were getting us to the promised land weren't really playing at their best level anymore, and we went through this really rough patch there. But we seem to getting it back on track now, and I'm feeling like this is the same thing that's going on with Collingwood. They're going through their rough patch. Obviously, they've been quite successful in the league historically, and now not so much. So we'll see. They definitely have some players with some good upside going forward. But I think the prediction is bang on, Callum. You couldn't have done it better, mate.
That's what I'm here for, guys.
Yeah.
Helping guiding you and our listeners and followers and subscribers. See, still trying to learn what all these guys are on all our different platforms we are. So again, please help us like, subscribe. But guys, let's have a look at 2022. How we break this up, of course, if you haven't seen our previous videos, is we go, who are the players we have nailed in for the best 22 and for our team come round one? We then go, who are the players in our active squad knocking on the door that we could potentially see in round one as a sneaky if injuries happen, etc., or potentially later on in the season? And finally, who are some players we've already crossed out and we won't be looking at all? Who wants to kick us off with this one?
I got you. Yeah, so the only guy I want in my starting 22 from the Pies is Crisp.
Yeah.
He's still got some years left in his legs at 28 years old, and he's been one of the highest floors in the defensive position, league-wise, for a very, very, very long time.
That's a really good thing. They're the consistency as well. We don't talk about that enough in these review ones, but that consistency just to stay at that level, yeah, that's a really good pick.
Yeah, exactly, and he'll definitely be occupying a spot down back for me. Unfortunately, he's the only one for the Pies that'll be there. Knocking on the door of my squad is actually going to be Taylor Adams. We know now that what Taylor Adams is. He's an elite ball-winning midfielder with a career average of 25 touches a game, and he's been a great fantasy asset in the past for however long he's been in the league at GWS and now at the Magpies. He'll be knocking on the door of my team and not in my active squad because of his health. He's had so many troubles with injuries, and he's only ever had one full 22 game season. That was back in 2017. So that's why he won't be in my best 22, but he'll definitely still be knocking on my door just in case he does, find that healthy season.
Can I pull you up here? Because I'm not hearing any Brodie Grundy in this.
No
this
Brodie Grundy.
No Brodie Grundy. Talk me through that one. Talk me through that one.
I'm leaving the spot open. I'm leaving the ruck spot open for me. I'm gonna, we'll touch on that later down the track, and I'll have a starter there. Damn. No Brodie Grundy for me in the Pies in my starting 22 or knocking on the door.
The suspense is building. Yeah,
controversial.
Yeah, that is wow, but fair call, fair play, mate. Play on. Who's your player you're avoiding? Yeah.
Player to avoid is going to be Tom's disappointment of the year. It's going to be Jeremy Howe. Coming off a cruel ACL injury that kept him out much of last year. At 31, I'm not sure we're going to see him bounce back to what he was in previous years. In the past, Howe's been a defender who could give you like an 80 to 90 fantasy average in other platforms. But now with Isaac Quaynor, I'm very interested in Isaac Quaynor solidifying his spot down back. And having the likes of Maynard and Crisp as well having similar roles, I think it's going to be hard for him to reach those numbers again.
Yeah, it's easy to see how you can make that call too, Kerm. So
yeah, it's a shame too because he's been such a good player, but yeah, tough calls.
We'll move over to...
Let me get into mine. Best 22. I have two players in my best 22, and it's going to be the guy that Kerm has fleeced. It needs to be Brodie Grundy. He's one of the best at his position. And with his team slide in performance since 2019, where we saw the Pies finish in the top four, which we touched on before, Grundy's importance is elevated to a new level for this team. And if they want to get back to their winning ways, it's going to be through going through Grundy. He plays such a pivotal role and he's a catalyst for their success. There's a clear opportunity for Grundy to score more fantasy points per game by cutting down on his free kicks against, which is currently at 2.15 a game. And of course, at the ruckman position, you are more susceptible to giving away free kicks, but if you could reduce this, then, his production, his performances will be even better than what he currently is now. And that's going to lead us into my next. Making my 22 next year is Kerm has gone on about this guy all podcast. So why don't I just keep going on about him? It's Jack Crisp.
Gun.
He's such a good player. Even though we talk about players' fantasy performance and success for the actual team and how that correlates, that didn't seem to matter with Crisp this year. He was tied with Grundy for 118 game day squad fantasy points per game. But the reason I've selected him over other players is because he's a backman. And we touched on before, he finished second as a defender for the year. This is some elite numbers for a player who is developing, and he's put up his best fantasy year since joining the league in 2012. And you know I love to talk about trending in the right direction, and this guy is clearly trending in the right direction. He's a player that I want. Knocking on my front door this year is no one. It's going to be quiet. But I will be avoiding a player in this team.
Who you got?
I will be. And this player averaged 103 game day squad fantasy points per game. So this might be a bit stiff on him, but it's still side bottom.
Ooh.
He's my player that I'll be avoiding
I don't mind
for
it.
the next couple of years. Look, let's talk about him. Like, honestly, he's a great player. He's a bit of a club legend, and this is coming from a guy who supports the Sydney Swans. So to even say that is already hard enough for me. So you can tell where I'm coming from here. But for me, it's his age, but more importantly, it's the premium that he has due to his name recognition in the league. Like, heaps of footy fans know who he is, and he's been such a force in the league for a long time. And he has a fantasy floor of 80 game day squad points per game since 2012, which, to be honest, is elite. And especially for at his position, that is some great numbers there. But I don't want to be paying a premium for a player like Sidebottom, where I know there'll be lesser name value players later that I can pick up for such a better deal. So Steel Sidebottom, unfortunately in my eyes, has had his best years already, and his worst years are in front of him. So I will be avoiding him coming into the next AFL season.
Drop
Big-
the mic.
Yeah, it's a big call, but I'm going to have to agree with you on that one. I didn't have him in my avoiding slot, but yeah, we just spoke about who are the players that are going to be in the Pies' next premiership team. He'd be pretty old if he's in that, but
What a story it would be if he was somehow to make
Yeah,
it.
geez.
But, yeah.
42 years old, Tom Brady-esque.
yeah, I took a very similar approach. You look at these guys trying to get their NFL plug-in. NFL Game Day Squad podcast. If you haven't heard it, go check it out. These guys absolutely love their NFL, and they will talk to you about that all day long. But you're here for AFL, so we will talk about AFL. I'm not going to talk too much more because, as you can see there, Tom, I've very closely mirrored what you've done. Got Cripps in there as well as Grundy. So Grundy, for me, I think I love him. I would take him over Maxi Gawn for his output. I love Gawny more, and I think everyone loves Gawny more after seeing what he's done after winning his premiership. But they're my two in my best. Cripps is an all first-team defence. We don't use that term here in the AFL, but he is. He would make the top 6 defenders last year, and I think he is a good shout to be pushing at it again next year. Again, like we said earlier, there's going to be a lot of ball down back. See if he can get his hands on it a bit more. No one for me knocking on the door. Very, very thin squad. A reason why I have them doing so poorly next year. And I've gone another superstar to someone to avoid. Almost the exact same reasons you said there, Tom. But I've gone Pandelbury. Since 2011, this guy has averaged 125 game day squad points per year. This would have been the first year, not including his COVID year, where he's dropped below the 100. He's not trending in the right way. If you do pack a Pandelbury card in the off-season, sell him to someone else. Because like you said, someone will pay for the name and you'll look like a genius getting more money for that Pandelbury card than you'll ever get out of value. So, yeah, they're my picks for the 2022 team, guys. Hopefully we have an upset. I still love Pandelbury as a person. I think he's been one of the best sort of superstars in our game. But, yeah, hate saying it, but, yeah, he's someone I've got a big red line through.
Just
I
quietly
just
as
want
well.
to mention, I love the Max Gawn and Grundy comparison. And if you look at the two players, yes, they play the same position, but when you see them on the pitch, they're quite different. Like, Grundy's that versatile ruckman. This guy averages 8 or 19 disposals a game, getting 9 of them from kicks and nearly 10 of them from handballs. They're elite numbers from a ruckman, and normally you'd be seeing that from a midfielder or a forward who's rotating into the midfield.
But can he kick 5 goals in a prelim final to send you to the granny?
I don't think so. Not with this
team. Was it 5 or
so
6? I still can't get over that game. Unbelievable.
It was 5.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I'm going to ruffle some more feathers as well, because you're making the comparison between Grundy and Gawn. And a little bit of a teaser for later on in these episodes. Gawn's not in my active 22 either.
Zach Smith, Gold Coast.
Wow.
Zach Smith. Club legend Zach Smith.
Wow.
But no,
All right.
yeah.
Stay tuned.
Have you got a sleeper on the rise, mate?
We never
Yeah.
know.
Yes.
Keep listening. Keep listening.
We will.
They know how to play the game. Side by side, they stick together.
Okay, guys, we are back with our last segment. It might have only been a few seconds for you. It was a while. We tried to find out who Kerm has in his ruck spot. He would not tell us. He's going to hold on to that information. So, like you guys, we have to wait.
Tight-lipped.
Yeah, I know. We cannot get anything out of him. But what we are going to talk and what we are going to get out of him in a second is who are the future stars currently in this Collingwood squad or team. Because part of Game Day Squad, as we know, you hold on to the cards. It's not just for next year. Yes, you compete for the premiership year on year, but you also build and carry your players from year to year. So there are players that we want to be building around, and I'm going to kick to you, Kerm. Who have you got as a future star that you'd be looking to build your squad around?
Yeah, so for me, I think Isaac Quainer can be one of the best halfback flankers in the league. Last season, he had 18.1 disposals a game, and I can't see him breaking below that mark from here on out. The way he plays reminds me a lot of Richmond's Bashar Hooley, that rebounding back who loves an intercept mark and can break the lines with ease. I think he's going to be a solid fantasy player for years to come.
It's a nice comparison.
Those flair players
Yeah.
really can input into teams and their fantasy score when they make those plays, and even potentially kicking goals from the halfback, which not a lot of players can do. So I love that pick, mate.
Yeah, it's so true.
Who you got?
But
Tom?
with my future dynasty player, it has to be Mr. Crisp himself.
Oh,
Crispy.
We've gone on about this guy. I just love the way he goes
we
about
love him
footy.
on this show, don't we? Damn.
Oh yeah, this podcast has been the Crisp's show. Grundy's been a bit hard done by here, considering he was the number 1 ranked player. But enough of that. As I touched on before, he's had his best season, or fantasy year, mind you, since 2012, and has clearly found his role for the team and in the AFL. His identity as a player... Well, he's found his identity as a player, which is great for fantasy managers. My only concern with him and his dynasty aspect, because of course we are a dynasty game here at Game Day Squad, is his age. Now, he's 28 years old. Now, I really believe that he still has a lot left in the tank and that he has some great years ahead of him. But it's how many years does he have left ahead of him, and how long am I going to be willing to hold on to a player like Jack Chris in my team? Because I don't want to be put in a situation where I've held him for that season too long and I've lost all of his value, and now I can no longer work the marketplace and make a good trade or a good deal to then upgrade my team for the future. I don't want to be caught in that situation. So it's a bit up in the air for me at the moment, but I still feel like he has some good years ahead of him. And if I was to get him and I was lucky enough to pack him next year, he would definitely, as I mentioned before, be in my team.
I love that. And for a team with a lot of holes throughout their whole team, their halfback flankers are really, really, really good. So, Crisp, he's always going to be good. He's always going to be productive. So, I really like this pick.
Yeah, for me, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to disagree with you, Tom. I thought last week when I put Paddy Cripps, geez, isn't that confusing? Patrick Cripps in this, and he was 26. I thought that's the absolute limit. Even putting Jack Martin in at his age as well. But yeah, no, there you go. That's why we play fantasy sports. That's why we love it. Because if Tom is right about this, I'm sure to be getting a few messages about it. But I'm going to zag completely here, guys. I'm going to give you someone that maybe some people have never heard of. And why have they never heard of him? Because as you can see there, he's not played a single game in the AFL. He isn't even drafted yet. And that's Nick Dacos. Guys,
Wow.
This guy is going to go number 1 in the draft. And he's going to be picked up using the bidding system under the father-son selection. He is going to find himself in a Collingwood jersey. He's actually already in a Collingwood jersey. Go Google it now. This podcast is coming out mid-November, but he's actually already committed to them because they know they're going to be able to pick him up. And just have a look at his NAB League seasons there. He's a guy that loves finding the footy, and as we know in Game Day Squad, he loves kicking it, and he loves scoring goals, which just mean that this is the type... If he can carry this form, and if he's that sort of player who can do, we're not saying the 40s there, but if he can score 30 touches and 3 goals a game, this guy is going to rival Dane Swan, who currently holds the all-time record for Game Day Squad average, which I think was 150 plus. I think he's one of only 2 players ever to break that barrier since we back-tested this game. Obviously quite new, hasn't launched yet, launches next year. But yeah, he's the type of guy where you go, hey, that record could be at risk. And the only reason I said at the start of the show, why did I not have the Pies bottoming out? Why did I have them slowly coming back up the mountain? And it's because of this guy. Because I think they've got a player who they can build around, someone who can give them hope. And yeah, to all the North fans that keep heckling me, that is what you guys don't have. You don't have that player that you have in your squad that you can be like, he can take us to the promised land. Obviously, a big call, no games. I could look like an absolute clown if it doesn't work out. But again, like we said before, very tough list to pick a star from, but that's who I've gone with.
But look at those numbers. Yeah, and the numbers don't lie. And goal-scoring midfielders in our game are especially valuable, as you already mentioned. And if he can bring some of this form into the AFL, he's clearly going to have a role straight away. There are plenty of holes in the team to fill. He's going to plug straight in, get lots of minutes, and could be putting up some serious numbers in his first year. And if this is a guy that you're going to end up packing in our game, he could be this player that you need to stash away in your club or play him in the first year and just wait for his value to rise.
And what I was going to say
this is just what the doctor ordered. Yeah, because we spoke about Steele Sidebottom and Scott Pandelbury. I mean, could you have better mentors going into the midfield of the guts of a Collingwood team? Like,
you've taken the words out of my mouth, Kerm. That's exactly what I was going to say. I was like, they might not be the players they were on the field, but they're probably at their best off it. So, yeah, perfect sort of handing of the torch. Couldn't agree with you more.
Good.
So I'm gonna give you another zag as we move into some of our other upside potential players. So we've given you who we think are some surefire things, but we're now going to go into some players high risk, high reward. And I'm going to start off. So I've obviously got Quaynor there. I'm not going to touch on him because I think you've said everything I need to say for him, Kerm. I think I can see him being the type of guy that becomes that really rebounding halfback who gets 100 points a game and really becomes a dominant sort of set and forget type of player. But I'm also going to go with the 2022 first pick because I told you they're going to come last next year, which means they're going to have the number one pick. They're going to have back-to-back years of number one picks, and I'm going with whoever they pick. Because if I'm them, I'm imagining it'll be some sort of key forward, and that's who that team needs. To me, that sort of just says where I think the list is at, where I'm picking two, upside players and a star player. I'm taking two players that have never even played game. One guy's probably not even 18 yet. He's probably 17 still in grade 11 or grade 12. So, yeah, they're my picks. Who have you guys got for some upsides that we can see there?
Cal's got a crystal ball, Tom. What do you reckon? Absolutely just...
This guy, man, he is on a roll right now. Wow, he's really banking on these picks coming through. And if they do, mate, you'll look like a genius. But wow,
I do my research, guys. I do my research, and I will do my research for our subscribers. There we go. Got it right that time.
Bam.
Who have you got? Who are your upside players, guys? Stop talking about me. Let's start talking about the Pies.
So I've got Josh Dacost. I'll take a flyer on him. He spent more and more time in the midfield as the season went on, and the older guys such as Pandelbury and Steele Sidebottom were struggling for match fitness. He finished the year with an average of 18 touches a game, and I can see this rising into sort of the mid-20s as he matures. Interesting enough as well, he had 2.5 clearances a game. And we could see him really own a midfield spot in this Collingwood side for a long, long time.
Yeah, that's a good pick.
Great pick. And I'm just going through my notes right now, and they're empty. And it's because I don't have anyone down for this segment right now.
Bang!
Unfortunately, there's a lot up in the air. I might have to come in agreement with you with maybe their first pick that they're going to take in the draft. He might be their upside player, but again, that's a lot of if, whats, and buts. And I don't want to be picking up players and playing them in my fantasy team due to speculation. I need to see some results. I need to see some stats. And unfortunately, I don't have any upside players in here. Of course, I love the players that we've already mentioned and that I've already spoken about throughout this podcast. But looking at the team, no one really came to me. Like, no one really came out, and unfortunately, I've left it blank.
Yeah. I know you're obviously in love there with Chris. We were just saying that before, but I can easily see why you would have gone with that. But guys, please let us know in the comments below if we've missed someone. We want to find gems just as much as you guys. So if there's someone who we've absolutely missed on here, let us know about it. I know people were heckling Tom about Tex Walker a couple of weeks back. Get into him. Get into us, guys. Let us know about it. We love to hear why we're wrong because we very rarely are. So there's too much of a plug on ourselves, but move on quite quickly to the dynasty potential that we have. And We spoke last week about the Blues and how I thought they actually had a bit of potential. Guys, I've got our first Tier 4 team. I just don't see where the Pies are. I just don't see in the 3 to 5 years in the future them competing for a premiership. You know, they've got some star pieces, but like I think you put it perfectly, Tom. Too many if-buts maybe for me to be able to slap them, even at Tier 3. Dacost turns out to be a star. Maybe I'll think about doing that, but one player doesn't make a team. We saw that. Sorry, Kerm. We saw that. You put Gary Ablett on a shit team, and it's just not going to turn them into a finals overnight. So, yep, condolences still for that, Kerm. But, yeah, that's why I've got him in Tier 4, guys. Have I got that one spot on?
Yeah, you do. That was unnecessary, but you do have this right. No, in all seriousness, this is a really long project, unfortunately. And if anyone knows anything about a long project, it's a Suns fan. And yeah, this just hits far too close to home. So unfortunately for Pies fans, or not unfortunately, I mean, we've seen Collingwood be at the top of, you know, one of the biggest clubs in the whole league. So yeah, it's about time they sort of, you know,
massive club
down
off
with
field.
the cellar dwellers.
Yeah, they'll always be able to attract free agents and everything because the lure of playing at the MCG also, and the supporters absolutely love them. But yeah, no, it's just funny to hear you call what Gold Coast is doing a project. I don't know what to call it that, but we'll quickly move on. Tom, what do you think of that?
Tasmanian Suns.
Mate, I think you're bang on. All the points mentioned are spot on. If it was longer than 3 to 5 years, it's the end of an era. They were so dominant for so long. Unfortunately, sustained success in the league is extremely hard to come by, let alone maintain for that long. So it was time. They're going through a rebuild right now. If there was a little bit longer than 5 years to sort of get back on track and get into the top 4, then maybe I could have considered Tier 3. Mm-hmm. But I think you've been very reasonable with this tiering. It is the first Tier 4 team, and for good reason, unfortunately.
I'm on fire, 4 from 4. This is why everyone should be listening to my picks, guys. If you're going to trust us here on Game Day Squad, trust me first, because as you can see, these guys think I'm spot on with it. Well, I'm sure we'll get to a few disagreements later on, but yeah, I'll quickly move on again, guys, because that wraps us up. That is our 4th team we've looked at. Of course, all building up for the launch of Game Day Squad to start off the 2022 season, which is launching with an AFL and NRL fantasy game. Guys, I can't wait for that to come around. We're heading towards the end of the year, a few months away from our launch. Again, we'll be packing a few Collingwood players, I'm sure, opening a few packs, and if we get a few, I'm sure they'll be straight to the delist button, or we'll be trying to quick sell them as soon as we can. But yeah, guys, until next time, what do we have to do, Tom?
And remember to ask yourself, guys, are you game day ready?
Boom, boom.